it's B. I'm here today to talk about Millsberry, a children's MMO created in 2004 by General Mills, the cereal company. Millsberry was released July 5th, 2004, and was obviously created as an advertisement to promote General Mills products. But for an advertisement, it was surprisingly fun and extremely memorable, at least for me and maybe like the 10 other people alive who remember it. Similar to other kid-friendly games of the time period, you would start off by making yourself an avatar that was referred to as your buddy. I specifically remember that on the customization screen, it gave you the option to give your character fangs. So of course, I would always give my character fangs and black hair and a skull t-shirt, and I was by far the edgiest 5-year-old playing Millsberry, or maybe ever. I just really liked vampires, but this is before the Twilight movies came out, so I was ahead of my time. Your buddy also had a customizable home that had both an interior, a front view of the home, and a garden. And the homes followed a similar format to a game you might be a little bit more familiar with, Webkins, using a tile grid of 25 lots to purchase different specific types of rooms on or outdoor areas, as well as giving players the option to build a second floor. New clothes, accessories, furniture, as well as adoptable pets, which included cats, birds, dogs, fish, rodents, and other, could be bought using Mills Bucks made by playing arcade games or selling items to other players at yard sales. The arcade games, at least in my experience, were one of the most memorable parts of the game, particularly the archery challenge, rope race, the Reese's Puffs cereal snowboard. Hold on, I don't know how to pronounce that.
Slalom.
Okay. The Reese's Puffs cereal snowboard slalom, and Hop and Drop, which was one of the many arcade games which featured a mascot from one of General Mills' cereal brands. This one had the Trix Rabbit. Items could be purchased at yard sales hosted by other players or at various in-game stores such as the Warehouse, spelled W-E-A-R, a hair salon where you could change up your buddy's look, the furniture store, or a store dedicated to updating the exterior of your home that looks identical to a Home Depot. The concept of yard sales in Millsberry was surprisingly important as it was meant to teach kids about money management and saving up to be able to purchase items that they really wanted. Millsberry was even complete with a bank that attempted to teach kids about owning a bank account that you could withdraw from or deposit into, as well as collect a certain amount of interest from, depending on which type of account you chose. Which, yeah, it's a useful thing to learn, but I'm pretty sure the demographic of this game is like 4 to 8 years old. A 5-year-old is not going to be able to understand interest. I'm 22 and I barely even understand it, but I get what they were going for. The whole game actually was kind of meant to be both a marketing tool and an educational tool, and I think the grocery store is a really good example of the intersection of these two purposes. The grocery store was always my favorite part for some reason. It's partly unsurprising because I absolutely love the grocery shopping part of the Flash Player Barbie Let's Babysit Baby Chrissy game that I was also playing a lot of at the same time I was playing Millsberry. But it's just kind of funny because now as an adult, I can't even go into a grocery store without noise-canceling headphones on just because I can't stand the noise of it. It's so overwhelming. Anyways, when you entered the grocery store in the game, it would display at the bottom of your screen which color icon corresponded to each section of the food pyramid. So it's important to note you did have to fulfill your buddy's needs similar to how you had to take care of a sim. So you would have to buy them groceries to fill their hunger bar. The purpose of having all of the food pyramid sections labeled on each one of the purchasable food items in the game was to try to teach kids to choose the most well-balanced meals. The product placement in the grocery store was the most prevalent out of anywhere else in the whole game, which obviously makes sense, it is a cereal company, but it did include things like Yoplait yogurts, Go-Gurts, fruit roll-ups, Gushers, and of course General Mills cereals like Trix, Lucky Charms, Cheerios, and all that good stuff. Little guy alert! Thank you, Merlin. Thank you. Oh, you're not done. Okay. Oh no, any time is fine, really. I have all day. Clearly. Books also played a very large role in this game, which sounds a bit silly, But there were not only books available in the game Schoolhouse based on school subjects like science and history, but there were also books available in the bookstore from other genres like fantasy and fiction, as well as magazines to read. Millsberry was surprisingly really extensive. I mean, I'm barely even scratching the surface of the amount of locations, mini-games, in-game items, books. I mean, it's genuinely impressive how much they shoved into this little tiny browser game. I mean, they really got a lot in there. I know this game was made as an advertisement, but in a way it kind of feels like a labor of love. It was a game that was really dedicated to trying to make learning different subjects fun and freely accessible for kids online, no membership required. Even if it just so happened to be made by a cereal brand and filled to the brim with product placement. Now, I'm not praising General Mills. General Mills did not make this game. There had to be some team of developers out there that put this thing together and, gave it out to the world, and it just so happened to be slapped with the General Mills brand on it. I don't know what team of developers made this game. There's not really a whole lot of information available about this game at all. I'm basically just going on memories and screen grabs to try to get all of this across to you. But, there had to be a team out there somewhere who was just really dedicated to making like an educational game for kids that just so happened to have the General Mills brand slapped on top of it. So I just think that it's a really neat concept for a game that just so happened to be released via General Mills. I mean, every location in Millsberry, except maybe the arcade, was made with the intent of teaching kids something new. Just to give a quick rundown of a few of these locations, I'm going to start with the Honey Nut Cheerios greenhouse that was made with the intention of teaching kids about various different plants and bugs, allowing them to grow flowers that would only grow if they were properly cared for over the course of a few days, as well as learning about bees, the purpose of pollen, the life cycle of plants, and how flowers get fertilized. This specific location just makes my little heart happy. Partly because of the bees, obviously, and partly just because I think that teaching kids about plants and where our food comes from and how important pollinators are is just great. I think what they tried to do with this game was really awesome, and it does make me a little sad that they don't really make kids games like this anymore, because they really did make learning about new things fun, and having it all in one place written in a way that's meant for kids to be able to understand, where you didn't have to try to look everything up yourself, was really such a great idea. This is what I mean, the bones of this game were really good, and I just kind of wish it wasn't branded by General Mills, because everything else about it is awesome. It's such a good idea for a game. The Academy was Millsberry's schoolhouse, which consisted of a gym, a science lab, a library, school store, classrooms, and cafeteria. The library contained free books on just about anything from asteroids to Mark Twain, and the classrooms each contained games based on their school subject, so games based on writing, reading, science, and physical fitness. Millsberry's park had baseball, skateboarding, football, fishing, basketball, and many other outdoor-themed mini-games, and the bait shack at the park allowed players to purchase different types of baits, lures, and poles to catch different types of fish at the pond, with a very strange fishing game that I remember playing an awful lot of as a kid, despite the fact that there wasn't really much to look at. The tour bus focused on encouraging kids to try volunteering in their communities in real life in places like shelters, hospitals, or soup kitchens, promoted participation in donation drives for things like canned foods and winter coats, gave ideas for doing random acts of kindness, and gave tips on how to be more environmentally friendly. The museum served the purpose of teaching kids about different types of art, such as Impressionism or Cubism. It had a coloring book minigame which allowed you to submit your creations to the student gallery to be voted on by the Millsberry community. The museum also taught about the history of various different inventions and their uses, such as automobiles and Braille, as well as taught about historical figures like Rosa Parks or Maya Angelou. There was also a place where you could create printable portraits of your buddy, which sounds kind of silly, but for some reason when I was a kid, I was obsessed with printing things out. So of course I made tons of portraits of my buddy and printed them out and hung them on our fridge. And I actually used to get in trouble for how many things I used to print out, because every time I would play a dress-up game, at the end, I would print out the character that I just dressed up and put them on our fridge, because I was 5. I didn't know how much printer ink costed, But that just made me realize that there is potentially a printed out picture of my Millsberry character somewhere in existence, probably sitting in a mildewy box somewhere. Lastly, I'd like to talk about the Career Center, which allowed players to choose from a variety of careers, from park ranger to fashion designer. It would explain what each career entailed and assign you tasks based on the career you chose. So that could be something like earning a certain amount of points during a game of Peabody Park Cleanup, which is exactly what it sounds like, or designing t-shirts. Millsberry was a game that had so much to offer, and it was a game that I frequented for years, all the way from its initial release in 2004 to its end on December 31st, 2010. The closing of Millsberry, for me at least, was incredibly sad. I didn't even know that it was closing. I just logged in one day and the, we're shutting down message was on the screen. And it seems silly to me now, but I actually wrote a very long and impassioned email to General Mills asking them not to shut down Millsberry because it was a game that I truly loved and meant a lot to me and probably a lot of other kids out there. But, unfortunately, I never heard back from them, but, at least the effort was there, I guess. A very sad end to a very cool game and a company that never wrote me back. General Mills. Anyways, I'm about to get real sentimental, so get ready for that. Here we go. Millsberry was truly something special. Yes, it was an advertisement. Yes, it was made by a cereal brand. But it existed to provide something more than just mindless fun. It existed to teach kids new things in a way that was enjoyable and didn't feel intimidating. It tried to get kids involved in their communities and bettering the environment. It tried to get them excited about learning about the world around them and how to navigate it, from banks to post offices to the history of how it became the way it is now and how we can improve it ourselves. There were tons of kids' MMOs during this time period, but Millsberry is the only one that I can think of that focused so much on the learning aspect without sacrificing the things that made it fun. You could still make your avatar and dress them up and buy new things for their houses, and it still had tons of mini games you could spend hours playing. But the thing that it didn't have was, paywalls. You did not need a membership. You didn't have to have the rich parents who were going to buy you the VIP membership, and, you were rewarded for the time that you put into it. There was nothing stopping you from buying the cool furniture or the cool outfits. And so I think that's something that also made it really special. It was free, completely free. You didn't have to pay for it the way you had to pay for games like Barbie Girls or Club Penguin or Pixie Hollow to be able to experience it the way it was meant to be experienced. There was no gatekeeping. There was no, this person is a higher status than you. It wasn't like that, and I think that's another thing that made it really special. I just want to reiterate the fact that yes, I know this game was made by a cereal company. Yes, it had SpongeBob Go-Gurt product placement literally everywhere. But it was also the first MMO that I ever played. I was 4 years old when this game came out, and I played it all the way up until it ended in 2010. And I don't think I would be able to remember so much about it if it didn't make such a big impact on me. And I know that I'm probably, I feel like I'm, again, the only person alive who remembers this game. But I know it probably meant a lot to at least a couple other people out there who remember it. So, as always, if you do have any experiences with this game, feel free to leave them in the comments. And I hope you all have a good day or night or whatever time it is wherever you are. And I will see you all again soon.